Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. It's October 18th, 2025. I pray everyone is as having as gentle of a Saturday as possible. I'm Shaquana from the Sage Dragon Book Show, where I discuss thought provoking books that I really enjoy across different genres. And if you like books, if you know people who read, who are interested in learning about books, please share this show with them. You can find me on all the platforms. You can keyword Sage Dragon Book Show to see previous episodes. Um, I just have to share that I'm really feeling a sense of remorse over the passing of Brother D'Angelo, Michael Archer. And I'm going to get into more of his life. I do have a bit of a honoring of him, but I'm going to do more of that as the days and weeks and years go by, because he played a big part of my journey in life, as so many others. I didn't know him personally, but I am sharing with the collective grief that many of us have of his passing due to pancreatic cancer. And I send deepest condolences to his family and his close loved ones. And he was a huge, it was a huge loss for us. Today's show is about activism. And it's really a relevant topic because, I mean, as we speak, there's a lot of protests going on in the country. There's the No Kings protests that are going on. Just seeing some footage on it. But as you all know, I read voraciously, and I've read some books that I think help with if you are interested in getting into activism. There's books that can teach you how to be a better activist or how to go about it in a way that can be effective. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There's three books. I'm going to do this over the course of a couple of episodes because these books are packed with information and knowledge and resources. And then I always like to take it a step further with my episodes and pull like interviews that I might find of the authors, other reviewers that may have reviewed the books, examples of what these books are talking about to really make it a strong resource for the world and an offering for the world. So today's episode, I'm going to go over two books, Protest Kitchen and Let's Move the Needle. So let's get into it. So first, we're talking about Protest Kitchen. Let's see. This book really had an impact on my it is had an impact on my life. I'll get into it a little bit more. Um, I There's an independent bookstore here in Rochester, New York, and last August I picked it up, and the title just caught me. Protest Kitchen. What are they talking about? And I didn't know anything about what the book was about. I came home and I started reading it. And Carol Adams is a long time writer in the space of animal rights, environmental issues, veganism, feminism. So a lot of that is intertwined into the book. So she's a scholar. She it does activism against domestic violence and homelessness and racism. And she's written numerous books over the years. One of her books that's been around, I guess, in the feminist animal rights world is The Sexual Politics of Meat. But she's written a lot of other books. I can show that here. This is from her website, different books she's written besides Kitchen, The Pornography of Meat, Ecofeminism, Neither Man Nor Beast. So she has a long history of writing about um, animal rights. But what she does beautifully is she helps you see how these things are linked to environmentalism. That was an eye opener for me. I also want to spotlight the other author of the book. Her name is, let's see, Virginia Messina. She's a dietitian, author, blogger, and activist. So, what is Protest Kitchen? It's an empowering guide to the food and lifestyle choices anyone can make for positive change in the face of the profound challenges of our time. Food choices not only affect your personal health and the environment, but they're tied to issues of justice, misogyny, national security, and human rights. And Protest Kitchen is the first book to explore the ways how a plant based diet challenges regressive politics. So I'll share a little bit about my life journey when it comes to eating. You know, I got into eating in a plant-based way back in the late 90s, and I read books like Heal Thyself by Queen Afua and African Holistic Health and Juicing for Life. And it really for me was about the health of self and the health of Black communities, because I was seeing the remnants of, you know, things that were impacting our communities, high blood pressure, but also alcoholism. And I just was becoming health conscious. And this is like the 90s. So it really for me was about that health conscious piece. And I lived a plant-based journey in different ways. I was pescatarian and vegetarian for a short period of time in college. When I was working at a health food store, I was vegan. But for the most part, I was like eating fish and seafood and what's called the Mediterranean diet. And I always wanted to adopt veganism eventually, but it felt more challenging to do that.
We got a
And
comment.
this person says they'd love to join your live stream whenever you're streaming. Add me on Discord. Okay. Thank you,
Black
retro
Black Pharaoh.
Black Pharaoh. Okay. And I don't know about Discord, but my producer will we'll get that going. Thank you for the comment and keep it. Let's keep this going because we got a lot to talk about. So anyway, moving on. I read as I was reading Protest Kitchen, the author makes a strong connection between the how our diets impact the environment. And what I didn't realize was how much the connections between your food choices impact a lot of things, you know, and she gets into this in the book. She talks about, for one, when a lot of us were learning about climate change and you know global warming, many of us were not told that the key reasons for this had to do with like the meat and agricultural industries. The messaging kind of danced around that. It talked about, oh, you guys, everyone should recycle. We should try to drive, you know, less, or maybe it was more about things like that and not talking about how harmful um, the farms and factory farming has been to environments across the world. The book gets into explaining how the meat and agricultural and seafood industries are very exploitive to labor practices, like how people are being taken advantage of. There's even human trafficking happening because once I read this book, I went on a rabbit hole of looking at some documentaries that also got into the labor practices of workers. It talks about how, you know, eating in the connection to climate change, food justice issues. The thing is, the meat and agricultural industries take a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources that are used on a property of land in order to be able to have animals simply to be slaughtered for the consumption of human protein. And it ends up being way more land, water that's used in other types of food diets. So it really opened my eyes to it. And I started to, I mean, there's a part in here you wouldn't need, I didn't really think about this, but it talks about the sexualizing of animals. And there were images of how um, animals are dehumanized. And getting back to my own journey, I was more interested in eating this way for health. But about a year and a half ago, oh God, it might have been 2 years by now, me and my family were fostering a German Shepherd, and Trigger, rest in peace. And it was the caring for him did something to me in terms of my empathy to animals. And it wasn't that I was an animal that I was cruel to animals. I wasn't one of these rah rah PETA people, but it was something about caring for Trigger, and he had a lot of painful experiences, and me and my partner was caring for him, that it made me think about animal empathy and compassion on a completely different level. So it was after reading this book and caring for him that I decided to transition over to veganism and become someone who just doesn't want to live a life where I'm perpetuating the cruelty of animals. So this book really gets into helping you understand that. It gets into also the connection between food and stress and depression, the slaughtering of animals and ingesting it. There's a lot of information on there about how we absorb that stress and depression in our bloodstreams. But it also talks about resources for eating and how you can live more cruelty free. The other thing that's really good about this book, why I'm talking about it today, is it teaches you about different activism practices. So, for example, there's a part of it where it talks about regressive politics, and to be aware of things that if you're trying to push up against something, and it doesn't have to be animal rights, it could be Black lives, it could be police brutality, immigration rights, labor issues. There's three things that the author says to look out for, and this is called regressive politics. One is the relabeling of information and renaming activism, repressing speech, and targeting activists as terrorists, and thereby suppressing activism. And I said, wow, that's some of the stuff that's going on right now. So it one example was that in 2006, Congress passed the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, AIDA, in 2006, and it was drafted to expand the definition of terrorism to include not only property destruction, but any action intended to deter animal enterprises. So what was happening was that the people that were trying to protect animals from cruelty, as um, animal factories were increasing these really grueling, terrible practices against animals, businesses stepped in and Congress collided and cooperated rather with the businesses and made it that if you speak out against this, now you're a terrorist. And now anything's a terrorist. And I remember seeing about a year ago, the University of Rochester, there was some students that were um, pushing up against what was happening with some of the Palestinian students in the U of R, and they were labeled terrorists for putting posters up. And and babe, you remember you had me cracking up because you was like they were putting posters up in the tunnels of the U of R, and it's like we seen the way them tunnels look. They tried to say they were defaming these tunnels that were. I mean, they already have a lot of posters on it. I used to work at the U of R, so I know what those tunnels look like. And that's the piece that we have to be careful of. Anything is now labeled terrorism. What is terrorism? And those are the types of things that try to deter you from speaking out against inhumane or rather wrong things, whether it's wrong about humans or wrong against nature or wrong against animals. So I wanted to stop there and put this question out to anybody that's asking. Can you name examples of how the label of terrorism has been used to deter protest in the world? Let me know if you see any comments, producer.
Not just yet.
Okay. All right. Well, this is when we do these shows, we put these questions out there so that even for people who are watching in the future, you can reflect. And if you have an answer, put it on and we'll look back at your answer. So look out for that. When you're trying to move towards change, you're going to get these harmful labels of being a terrorist if you're against things that aren't about whatever whatever the mainstream is pushing, or the tyranny or the king or the wannabe king is pushing. Hold on a moment. So yeah, so I have a video that I want to show at this time that about this book. So let's show that.
Health benefits. This is not one of those books that claims veganism is going to extend your life. It might, but it might not. Instead, we will show you how veganism is an act of resistance, as well as a resource for hope and healing. This is resistance that starts in your kitchen, making it the ultimate in local activism. While most people need to step back from activism now and then out of necessity, everyone has to eat. When the rest of life feels overwhelming, every meal provides an opportunity to continue your resistance. But what happens in the kitchen doesn't stay in the kitchen. Earlier protesters of unjust conditions knew that. Before the Civil War, abolitionists refused to buy sugar from the slave states. By their mere existence, soup kitchens throughout the decades have protested hunger. Since the 1960s, boycotts of lettuce, strawberries, and other foods have been an essential part of fighting for better labor conditions for the farm workers who harvest our food. During that same decade, the Black Panthers began a free breakfast program for school children. It not only fed more than 20,000 children in 19 cities, but called attention to the connection between childhood hunger and school performance. In the early 1970s, U.S. housewives stopped buying meat because prices had soared. Their boycott prompted slaughterhouses to close for days. Feeding people, and boycotting food linked to unethical practices are the hallmarks of historic protest kitchens. We know.
So, yeah, so that video just gives you an example of the connection between eating food and fighting back. So something the reason why I think this is a good pathway into activism is like the book said, everybody has to eat. So it can feel overwhelming right now. You know, we're in a government shutdown. I have friends personally impacted by it, you know, that aren't working. People I know have lost their jobs over the last couple of years. You know, we are losing people personally, we're losing people in the public sphere that impact grief. So there's a lot of things that make us feel like where you could end up feeling paralyzed to be inactive. And this area, this particular area and this cause of eating consciously, pursuing sovereign eating, whether it's growing food, this could be an area. This could be an area that we could dive into and say that this is the thing that we're going to, um, this will be your form of activism. And the reason why you get a lot of bang for your buck if you go the plant based route is I'll go into the second slide is there's so much data that a vegan diet massively cuts environmental damage. A detailed analysis finds plant diets lead to 70% less climate heating emissions, water pollution, and land use. So with this one act, if you say I'm going to eat plant-based, eat less animals or no animals, or do any of that cruelty in my diet, you're addressing several issues at once. You're helping to reduce global emissions. You're helping with climate change. You're helping with water pollution. You're helping with labor exploitation. So you're hitting a lot of things that are harmful just by your dietary practices, on top of the fact that you're able to improve your health. And for communities that are impacted by health disparities, just the fact that we can extend our life because our life expectancies have been shrunken by all of the racism and issues that we fought against, we're also increasing our chances of being able to be healthier and have a longer life. We can't predict things. I know cancer and heart disease and stress and various accidents can impact us all, but there's been a lot of studies. You can look at the Asian study. There was just a cardiologist one that talks about how these types of diets benefit our health. So in with this one lifestyle change, you're able to hit a lot of areas. And I think that that's worth considering. I've got a little bit more to share on that video. So can we play the second part of it, please? Unless we have any comments.
Stereotypes contribute to this view of apolitical vegans. The skinny bitch vegan. The you only think about the animals vegan. The holier than thou vegan. Like other stereotypes, these woefully miss more than they capture about veganism in the 21st century. They overlook the dynamic variety of vegan social justice activists, the organizing vegans supporting farm workers, the policy wonk vegans pushing to educate about climate change, the reproductive rights vegan activists who work for access to reproductive health care, the food justice vegans organizing community gardens and food collectives to bring vegan food to their low-income communities, the scientists and inventors seeking to create alternative meats to make eating animal flesh obsolete. Specifically, the stereotypes diminish the meaning of veganism and miss the fact that it is a social justice movement with deep connections to political resistance. In addition, the stereotypes imply that vegans have deviated from conventional food practices in ways that exclude many. But when you consider the diversity of the places from which we derive some of our favorite foods, a diet often viewed as exclusive could be seen as truly inclusive. We are drawing on the rich soy cultures of China, tofu, Indonesia, tempeh, and Japan, miso and soy milk, the legume protein inventions of the Middle East, hummus and falafel, and the nutrient-dense foods from Latin America, quinoa, black beans, chia seeds, peanuts. We don't claim that being vegan is all you need to do to make things better in our world. But we do want to show how the practice of veganism and its relationship to how we think about the status of animals are connected to progressive values. Like the #GrabYourWallet campaign, veganism is in part a sophisticated boycott using economic consequences to bring about change. We will examine how animal oppression is related to human oppression, and how changing the way we look at animals and removing barriers of otherness fortify our ability to view all beings, including all people, with respect.
So that is a great summary of what Protest Kitchen does. It really nicely opened my eyes to, like I said, a lot of issues. It connected dots. Similar to, there's a book by Angela Davis where she talks about Ferguson and terrorism in Palestine. And I got that book back in 2018 when I went to a community schools. It was like a social justice conference on getting more schools across the country community oriented. So it was before the latest conflict between Israel and Palestine. But I read that book and she connected dots for people who may be like, let's say you're a Black American living in Baltimore, and you're like, well, what does that have to do with my issue? She connects the dots of how strong military worlds and policing that may be happening there when they were creating this state and emphasizing apartheid against Palestinians does impact us. Well, similarly, this book connects it for us. Sometimes we need to understand that. And I can understand why a lot of people from vulnerable communities and communities of color didn't get why maybe we should be that tuned into like animal welfare. There were people who felt like we were still striving and struggling for our own humanity. Why should we care? But it is all linked. If the environment if we end up having all these disasters and natural tsunamis and floods and different things that are happening because of increased global warming, we tend to be in the areas where those floods and situations happen the most. It'll be 20 years since Katrina. It was 20 years since Katrina happened. So we really can't afford to not be tuned into what's going on in our environment and understand the cause and effect of things. And that's what reading books like this helps us do. There's a statistic, according to Dawn Moncrief, who founded the Washington-based nonprofit A Well-Fed World, the world's least food secure populations are also disproportionately harmed by climate-related events such as droughts, hurricanes, tsunamis, and flooding. These events don't just impact food production, but they impact food distribution, and they create more opportunities for terrorism. So yeah, it's all connected. And that's a fact of Protest Kitchen. I want to share a fun fact. Can we show this video about Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks? That was from veganintel.com. It's getting really dark in my my area. I'm used to doing this during the day. But thank you, veganintel.com. And the reason why I showed that has to do with the fact that when it comes to things like veganism, environmental issues, animal rights, we're not usually associated with being at the forefront or being involved in those movements. And I want to change that imagery. And it has increased over the years. A fun fact is that the Black population in the United States is one of the fastest growing vegan populations. And I get it. I could see why. For one, we've got these health disparities we're trying to tackle. And two, we get oppression and we get exploitation. So once the dots are connected and we start learning about it, I think it's an easier transition for us to say, yeah, this is, we care about these topics. But it is still a lot of people who aren't. And I want to encourage people to consider it because it's really a timely issue. There's another video that I want to show that shows someone who is, um, a Black man who is taking this approach. It's called an intersectional approach to animal and human rights from the Soul Eubanks video. So can we show that?
Of exploiting others is always going to have an impact on our overall society. I became vegan after watching the film Cowspiracy. During that time, I just learned a lot about how the animal agriculture industry negatively impacted the earth. So that propelled me to become vegan, and now I participate in animal rights activism, and I have my own nonprofit called Apex Advocacy, where we help communities of color fight back against animal agriculture. I realized that for the longest, as a person of color, I was brought to recognize the oppressions that exist in our society at a very young age. And it's something that hit me, in my early teens. I began to really understand that people of color have it a lot more difficult than other people in society. Colonialism definitely continues to contribute to a lot of the negative things that take place in communities around the world. The food systems that exploit us, the placing of these slaughterhouses and the manure runoff, the waste, the environmental impact. From the time that people of color were colonized in America, we were stripped of our culture, we were stripped of our identity, our heritage, and we were given new food systems that weren't naturally something that we lived and experienced in our own culture. We have some of the most cherished memories in our lifetimes because of the foods that we eat and the connections that we have with our families. Plant-based foods have been a staple in our communities well before colonization. I began to realize that I was also contributing to the oppression of non-human animals in my everyday actions. And I started to think that, okay, this is a form of injustice because I don't want this to happen to me, and I've been fighting pretty much my entire life for speaking out against the impacts of white supremacy. But here I am also contributing to the psychology of making another individual's existence inferior to mine or less than mine. As long as we are continuing to contribute to the normalization of exploiting others, it's always going to have an impact on our overall society, because when we make way for some discrimination, it makes way for much more discrimination. So in order for us to fight collectively against all forms of discrimination, we have to assess what forms have our society normalized, what ways have we participated in, and ultimately, what ways can we resist and fight back against those forms of discrimination?
Yeah, so I really agree with what he is saying. I think it's actually what it is it's a higher form of consciousness if you really think about it. And I was just thinking about that song on, I think it might be Brown Sugar by D'Angelo, where he's talking about take you higher. We are elevating our consciousness, and it's not just, we are not the only sentient beings. There are other sentient beings besides humans. However, a key part of why I brought this book up, it wasn't that I was trying to like be a converter here. This book gets into activism, and it helps to connect dots on how our food, if we follow the food money, there's a lot of nasty things that are happening. So if we want to divest from those things, we could use the way that we eat as a way to do that. And that's a key part of what my message is and a key part of what this book is talking about. So I wanted to bring this question to anyone that may be out there. Um, do you believe that humans have right of dominion over animals? Anyone want to brave that question? Any comments out there, producer?
I see one generating. I'm waiting
Okay.
for it to finish.
Okay. There have been various religions that promote that. Christianity, that's a huge tenet of. I have seen some discussions happening in the Christian world where there are some people that are against that, rejecting that. They want to maintain their Christian lifestyle while also making space for more animal and environmental, I wouldn't say equality, but more less of a supremacy piece, because that white supremacy mentality spread against across people, but it also was for animals, it was for the planet, nature. Actually, it's not even just for Earth. There's people, people who really subscribe to that. And let's make it clear, you do not just have to be white to be a white supremacist. It's a mentality. So if there can be somebody who's black, Chinese, or others that are programmed to think that whites, those ideals are supreme, and the things that they are purporting, whether it's manifest destiny, imperialism of planet and the world, if you get sucked into that, you may feel that we are, they have rights over everything that lives and breathes. So it's a deep conversation. For a long time, I will say that I was trying not to be the type of person that was preachy. I don't want to be preachy. I don't want to be a food Nazi. I would say those things, but I can no longer sit aside, especially as I become more educated to how all these issues connect, to not share. So this is a space for sharing. So does anyone want to give me their perspective on that? Do you feel that we have dominion over animals? Is the bubble still bubbling?
Yeah, I got the dots.
Okay.
They're still, no, they might be writing a paragraph.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll keep going in the interest of time. I think I have one more video to show. It's called "Is Culture an Excuse to Exploit Animals?"
Give me the title one more time.
Is culture an excuse to exploit animals? And I wanted to play that from like the 3 minute and 25 second mark to the 5 minute and 24 second mark.
Okay, give me a sec. I gotta set it up.
Okay. And in this, I'll just give to the audience if they're interested in looking at it and understanding what the title is. It's a video that I found on YouTube. I think it's somewhere in the UK where someone is just like in a mall and they pull in different people to ask the question, and they're having a conversation. Two people are having a conversation about this topic, and it's a video showing perceptions of normalizing animal cruelty.
Which sort
In
of
what way?
in our capabilities, for example, building all of this, exploiting them in a very bad way, but we are superior by just being us, since we are capable of putting them in hen houses and abusing them. And I believe that if the roles were switched, that we were just sort of stupid animals, we would be the ones in the hen house, for example.
I mean, that turns the question about like might makes right. So that means because you can do something, you can physically do something, means it's all right to do. Do you really believe that? Because, for example, men are physically more like, they are stronger than women. They are able to. They have a lot of much power and privilege. Does that mean that they can use that power to hurt other people?
No.
No, right? Because it's not about what you can do, it's about what's the right thing to do. Like, an animal wants to live, and animals have their own desires and their own purposes, right? We have to regard their interests. So, you said before, like, we have done it for thousands of years.
Yes.
But because an action has been done for thousands of years doesn't mean it's okay to do it right now, right? Because we have done things part of our culture, right? Women couldn't vote. Slavery was legal and part of culture, and we have done it for thousands of years. But does that mean that slavery is okay? No, of course not, right?
Yes. I do see your point, but since like the aspect of us being done this for like thousands of years, I think it would be hard for us to go back to like just eating plants and being a vegan.
We can at least like find a common ground that animals are individuals, because I feel like you are talking about like abuse, and you're talking about it's bad that they're crammed up in a warehouse, that you are seeing them as individuals. If you
Yeah. So, and she gets more into talking about what's happening with animals. Like I said, I hadn't in the past delved into that world. Ely on Twitter, we have conscious minds and opposite thumbs, so white folks think this gives them right to ravage the planet as they want. Catholic Church started this mess. No spirituality bones. Thank you, Ely on Twitter, for that. There's a lot to unpack there. The role that the Catholic Church has played in white supremacy and slavery, and yeah, they have played a lot of roles, a lot of the religions. Yeah. And And then we are where we are now, where we have access to information like never before. We have these $1,000 phones most of us are walking around with. And once you start learning, you can't unlearn, you can't unsee it. You can choose to ignore it, but your spirit won't feel right. So, so yeah, I all in all, I think this was an excellent book. I would recommend it, and it's really not that long of a read. And the other thing that's nice about it is that it includes daily actions to make your kitchen more environmentally conscious. So not even just what you're eating, but how you're cleaning, um, all types of steps. It has a lot of delicious recipes in it. There's health tips, there's diet and lifestyle. There's a section on the connection of depression and stress that a lot of us are facing, and how we can use supplements and different, lifestyle practices to help us with our stress levels. And then there's a very comprehensive bibliography of books about veganism and social justice. So I learned a lot about activism. For example, there was a part of the book where, in the early part of it, she talked about nostalgia and the nostalgia trap, and how sometimes when we're trying to move towards change, we get stuck as a society in reminiscing about yesteryear. In the current administration used a term called "Make America Great Again," which was an example of this. And she didn't talk about that per se, but it had me thinking about that, because a lot of what has been, I've even seen this on social media, on TikTok, with the trad wives movement. The author referenced a book called The Way We Never Were, which I also read. And that book, the sociologist dispels myths about the American history, from colonialism and beyond, and these time periods. So, for example, the 50s is being romanticized, the trad wife imagery on TikTok. But there were things that were happening during the 50s with women in the workplace, definitely with Black women, that's not aligned to what trad wives are talking about. The other thing about the whole going back and making America great again is, even if you're talking about white men, when they came from World War II, there were all of these governmental movements, FHA loans, different job programs that gave them access to go back out in the workforce after women were had been working during World War II, and they were really being pushed to go back into the kitchens, and they didn't want to go back in the kitchens. They had been in the workforce already. So then the society started to develop these like trinkets and things like vacuum cleaners, and a lot of commercialism around domestication, in order to try to lure women, these were white women, back into the home, when some of them wanted to have things like community kitchens. I had never learned that. I never heard of that concept, but there was a movement to go against that. So when you hear these terms like "Make America Great Again" and you see Maha, are they reading, and are they really understanding what was happening, on top of the fact that there were other populations like the Black population that had never stopped working? They had been working and trying to make a way, to pushing up against, racial covenants that weren't allowing them to get equal access to jobs and homes and education for their children. So it was what was great. So she talks about this nostalgia trap, and it's something that we all have to think about. We romanticize different parts of history and parts of even our own family histories, and times that may not have been it may be time to break those patterns for the times we're in now. So that was another shift that I really reflected on when I was reading this book. So check the book out. I hope that you all are interested in maybe adopting a diet that is less oppressive to our planet in the conditions that there are now, less oppressive to animals and less oppressive to your health. And those all of those things are outlined in Protest Kitchen. Any comments out there before I move on to the next book?
I was gonna kind of stay quiet, not give my 2 cents on the question that you asked earlier, which is this one here.
Yes.
Can you name examples of how being labeled terrorism was used to deter protests in the world? And as a history teacher, that's like a softball question. So I didn't want to like
No, I
steal.
would love to hear. I want to hear.
I didn't want to steal any thunder. I wanted everybody else to participate because that's like a really easy question. One of the easier time periods to think about when you think about something like that was the Vietnam War.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
how if you disagreed with the Vietnam War, you were a communist, you were a malcontent, you were a terrorist, whatever label the macro
Yeah.
management wanted to put to you. And of
Hmm.
course, that's right after civil rights. That's right in the middle of the Black Power movement, and it was way too easy to just point a finger, get the Mockingbird media to
Hmm.
parrot, labels and ad hominems,
Hmm.
and just unjustly undo what your better intentions were and what the masses of people actually needed. I think about what's the brother's name out of Chicago, um, Fred Hampton, and
Hmm.
how Fred Hampton was able to. He was the first one to really get the Ally movement going in the United States, where you would have a lot of white people, Spanish people, all types of downtrodden and indigenous people with the same categorical savage inequalities. You not eating, we not eating. You don't have jobs, we don't have jobs. Let's ally and move
Hmm.
this thing along. And if you were a part of that, then you got labeled whatever they wanted to call you, terrorists or maybe even something worse. And you got physical violence put on you as a result of it. So, a lot of that stuff is being parroted now, and a
Hmm.
lot of that stuff is being mirrored today.
Yeah.
So, if you have a lot of like, MAGA uh, theorists and MAGA tendencies or proclivities, don't drink the Kool Aid.
Yeah.
Try to find out what people are all about. Try to
Hmm.
find out what makes people tick instead of judging people. The same treatment you would want, treat people the same way.
And thank you for that example because I read a book about Vietnam last year. And what it was showing was that as the years were going by, some of the most conservative people, even they started changing their position on Vietnam. The longer the war went by, the more and more men that were dying from Nam, the more and more they were seeing how it was so disconnected from America, this whole North versus South and what America's role is it in it and the fear of communists spreading. Even people who at first were on board with it weren't. And there's a book that is a national book foundation finalist. And I think the title is something like One Day Everybody would have been against it, and it's by a Palestinian. And I think what he's referring to, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm get the sense that I get is that we're going to have as a country a time where we go back and say we this was not a good thing, similar to what was happening during Nam, where it took years. 60,000 people lost their life during Vietnam. It was a 10-year war. And there was shifts. There was shifting over time. Is that going to be a thing where we're going to look back 5 years from now and people that didn't really want to touch the issue that was happening between in the Gaza war, or felt like they were all terrorists, even if you just said it was uh, genocide? Are we going to look back and be on the wrong side of history? And those of us who may feel like that's not my issue or cause, and we're not divesting or boycotting or speaking out against it, are we going to feel like we were on the wrong side of history? And it's something that I'm thinking about. Deja's comment: many conservatives switch their mindset once they're actually educated. Yeah, so that's true. Yeah, some people do. Some people double down. Some ignorance does double down, but you're right. People can be educated. They got to want it though. So thank you for the comments. Keep them coming. So, in interest of time, I'm going to move to another really good book that I read. This one is so good. It's called Let's Move the Needle, an activism handbook for artists, crafters, creators, and makers. Build community and make change. And it's by the author. Her name is Shannon Downey. Just a quick author spotlight. Shannon Downey is the founder of Badass Cross Stitch. She's an artist, activist, craftist, community builder, general instigator. Her work moves people from passive consumers of art into engaged creators, and leverages craft based art forms to bring people together, present opportunities to transition from makers to change makers, and inspire radical hope for what is possible. Her award winning work can be found in galleries and museums, private collections around the world. It's been featured in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. She also was involved in the notorious RBG, Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America. And she's a faculty at Columbia College. So I came across this book in a indie bookstore. Um, the title, I was like, let's move the needle, something for artists and crafters and creators. And I create, I craft, I do jigsaw puzzles, but I also am a writer of poetry and rhymes and essays. And I also have a ton of creative people in my family, creative friends. So I was like, the combination of creativity and social change and using art for change, I'm all for that. And the art that I consume, most of the art that I love is about resistance or change in some way. So I wanted to read Shannon's book to find out more about this. So the book contents are the history of craftism. So, what is craftism? It's a way of looking at life where voicing your opinions through creativity makes your voice stronger, your compassion deeper, and your quest for justice more infinite. It's the practice of engaged creativity, especially regarding political or social causes. By using your creative energy to help make the world a better place, craftists help bring about positive change via personalized activism. So it's like using your craft for some form of activism. That definition I got from craftism definition. But a short way of doing it is using whatever craft you have, whether you knit, sew, paint, sing, dance, whatever your craft is. It's all sorts of crafts. You're a woodworker, you make fire, you cook, you're a chef, whatever your specific craft and gift is, but using it in a way of to move the needle, to make some change. That's what it's about. But how do you do that? And I feel like a lot of times when something's going on, I was just reflecting on Katrina, and I remember I just had my daughter who's 20 years old when Katrina happened, and I'm breastfeeding her and I'm nursing her and I'm looking at that. That was horrible to see. It was horrible to see that. especially as a Black person in America, you felt like you wanted to go down to Louisiana, wherever you were, and help, because we saw people without medicine and food and sanitary napkins in the dome. It was just terrible to see that, and time has gone by, so we might not have remembered that. But my point is, sometimes you want to just do, you want to just get active. But this book shows you there's ways to go about it so you don't burn out, so you're not ineffective. And I think this book, I think this is required reading. I would say that. And it's a fun, it's not she's fun. She's not like, it's not boring, because it has anecdotes and things like that. But I think we need to read more and learn more about like other movements in history and social political movements before we just jump in, because there you need some kind of guidance on how to do this. And that's what this book nicely does. There's a part of it where it talks about self-awareness and moving towards craftism. Like, before you even start to work on a cause, what matters to you? What are your values? Like, what do you care about? And you got to do some soul searching on that. And it has exploratory questions on how you can do that. There's a lot of research. There's a section on like root cause analysis of how to say you want to get involved in a cause, domestic violence, whatever the cause is. You need to learn about the you need to learn about it, the why behind the why behind the why behind the why behind the why. Five whys that get to the root cause. It gets into like how to create teams if you want to form a movement, or you want to attach yourself and get involved in a movement that already exists. There's also stuff on like goal setting, messaging, and then there's various planning tools. So it is really a very resourceful book. What I also like about the book is the author Shannon. She shares her personal story. She's a stitcher, so she uses the craft of stitching to make a difference. And she showed like how she was able to do that. It explains different tools for using craftism, pages 18 to 21. So, like for instance, this was a really help. I think this was really helpful. This part where, for instance, she says, "Let's get organized," and she describes. Say you have a craft of, let's say you're an artist, you're a photographer. So she explains like different ways that you could take photography and use it as a craftism. It could be awareness. So she defines all the different tactics of a movement. Awareness is different from a boycott. So awareness is a piece, collection of pieces or project designed to bring attention to an issue or topic. Then there's boycott. There's challenging narratives. So a piece might, the purpose of that piece might be to challenge a counter narrative. So I remember going to, um, years ago, I worked at an HBCU, Morgan State University, and we collaborated on this weekend around the Tuskegee experiment. And there was all of this activity that weekend. And there was this artist called, I can't remember his name, but he did an exhibit called Bad Blood. And it was about what happened to the Black men during the Tuskegee experiment when they were being purposely treated like guinea pigs and they weren't getting treated for syphilis. So that was a education, a piece collection of pieces of projects created for the purpose of sharing knowledge with the viewer or community. There's healing. So I love how she outlined And it goes on for pages. Resource building, a project that invites makers to contribute goods and items to build resources around a specific community need. Social and political commentary, storytelling. So if you have a craft and you're trying to figure out, you want to make change in the world, it's good to think about, okay, what am I going to do with this? Do I want it to be something that sparks civic engagement? Is it a piece for healing? A piece collection of pieces, a project meant to aid in a physical, mental, or spiritual healing journey? All of these things have a place in the change movements. It's just about figuring out where your craftsmanship goes. And that's what I like about this, because it can help you think more strategically about like how you want to position your craft. Ellie on Twitter says, what you're speaking on is what made Gordon Parks so famous. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Gordon Parks, incredible. So that's what I really, one of the things that this book nicely does it gives these frameworks for activism. There's examples of craft movements. I'll get into that in a moment. I'm going to show a couple that the book highlights. It gives you guidance for how decisions are made. And that, say you're involved in a movement, and you join a local grassroots organization that wants to tackle homelessness or poor job practices. There's a couple of companies in a certain city, and they're taking advantage of the workers. And you're getting stuck on how to make a decision as a group. There's some information in here with some examples of decision making frameworks that you can use. Those things exist. We don't have to like white knuckle through it. And you don't want those to be the reasons why groups disband and they're not able to be successful. So I think we do need to get educated on how to be better activists. And if we're artists and we have crafts, and many of us do, it's a great way to feel like your crafts are making a difference. Right now, right now, what's going on in the world, we should be putting craft activism out there. There are some terrible things that we got to push up against. And our art, to me, the art shouldn't be soulless right now. I don't like soulless art anyway. But if any time, we should not have soulless art. We didn't have it in the 60s and the 70s. We need that soulful art. That's why we're so, sad about, losing D'Angelo, because he was a soulful artist. And we have whatever our tools are, we need that art that's going to push up against it. And this book kind of gets to that. Some of the movements that are that she gives examples are, there's this Swadeshi movement. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Swadeshi, that was it was a movement, and it was an independence movement in India, and it was initiated in 1905. It was an economic boycott of goods manufactured, imported by the British. And so that was led by Gandhi. And so that was an example, because they used their artistry and craft to push up against um, German forces and to believe, imperialism. The another example I have a video for. This was, I like how varied these were in the book. She talked about movements, art, craft movements from all over the world. There was one called the Project Fire, and I have a video to show. Can we show that? This was a trauma recovery program.
particularly effective in working with students who've been exposed to traumatic experiences partially because of the risk that's involved in working with the material. It's potentially dangerous. We're working with 2,000-degree molten material. It requires quite a level of trust to be able to work with the material.
Having to learn how to walk again, like, and try to run again, all that stuff, like, that was like the worst part. The bullet's still in my leg right now, like, I've been like kind of started to change my life around, like, ever since, like, a lot of people, I've been losing a lot of people and stuff like that. Glass blowing asked me to do that because they'll be like, you don't look like you blow glass or something like that, but I could show them better than I could tell them. Like, people look at you different too, like, he ain't just trying to be out here in these streets. He trying to really do something with his life and stuff like that.
My end-all goal for the students here is that they see other opportunities for themselves in any field, in any medium, in any way. They see a sense of future.
Hey, LA, that looks good. What do you think?
Yeah.
That's a nice shade, man.
Yeah, so shout out to Project Fire Fearless Initiative Recovery Empowerment, and it's a trauma recovery program built around craftism for youth injured by gun violence in Chicago. And so they're taking the craft of building glass, which those glasses were beautiful, and they're community building, they're healing, they're educating, they're getting involved in skill sharing, they're challenging narratives, within themselves. You can have a narrative, oh, I'm nothing but a thug. I'm nothing but someone who lives in a city. I'm not a glass blower. Well, now you challenge that narrative within yourself. You see other people challenging the narrative. So, challenging narratives is a powerful way to transform. Then there's reflection and understanding. All of those things through this craft of glass blowing. And so that's what's so dope about being able to see how a craft can help you. Hold on a moment. Um, just a quick little pause. And if anyone has any comments out there, anyone have any crafts they're doing to help? Thank you. The lights on. Another one that the book talks about is Mimes Against White Supremacy. In 2010, it was started by the Center for New Community, and they do protests, they do civic engagement, challenging narratives, resistance, and they do street craftism. And there's so many examples in this book. There's a one called Stop Telling Women to Smile that she talks about, and it's a Brooklyn-based artist named Tatiana Fazaladiza. She offers a dynamic street craftism campaign titled Stop Telling Women to Smile, which boldly tackles gender based street harassment in public spaces. Another one that I'd like to highlight is, I hadn't heard of this one, but it was a Breonna Taylor postcard campaign. And on Breonna Taylor's birthday, people call for justice with birthday cards. So that's on page 40 of the book. And it was protest, it was community building, record keeping, and it was led by Melissa, with support from other craftists, including the author. And the community created more than 100 handmade postcards, which they mailed to Cameron, who was the former Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, because they wanted him to file charges against the Louisville police officers who were involved in Breonna Taylor's murder. So it's all types of ways that you can use your craft. If you like baking, if you like writing letters, whatever it is, you get involved in a collective, you figure out a cause, and you help inspire change in that area. I'm going to stop in for a moment. See if there's any comments out there. Yeah.
I'd like to read something if I can.
Yeah, please
So
do.
it says in New Orleans, the tradition of African Americans creating and wearing intricate beaded suits is a practice by Mardi Gras natives known as black masking natives. Codified. This practice is a celebration of black and native culture, paying homage to the native people who provided refuge to melanated people who escaped chattel slavery. They
Mm,
had suits, a hidden carnival, tribes preparing traditions. There was no competition. The Mardi Gras native practice is a testament to the resilience of the New Orleans black natives and enduring legacy of alliances formed between melanated black people and natives in the land of New Orleans. That's
mm,
a example. And every year, the Codified, right around time of Mardi Gras, they create their own beaded royal garb,
mhm,
and it's a tradition that's handed down from father to son, mother to daughter. They
mhm,
have a line, they parade in the street. It's a very sacred tradition of theirs. It's a very proud tradition of theirs,
mhm.
and it's a way of using your craft to protest.
Yes. That's a great point. And I remember that series Treme showing that. It was an education for me. So that would be an example, like when I'm looking at the book, I could see how that is challenging narratives. There's coded message sharing. That's another tactic where a piece or collected collection of pieces create to secretly share information with a specific community or audience. It's community building, it's healing. Like you said, it's protest, it's record keeping because it's keeping history going. Oh man, it's storytelling. That's another one. So these categories kind of help you, like, it can help you just figure out what do I want to do with my craft. So yeah, thank you for that because that is another. I love seeing that. I want to see that some more too. Like maybe even go down there. I've been feeling a desire to go to New Orleans anyway. So that's a beautiful example.
Let's
Uh,
go to NOLA, baby. Let's go to
what is
NOLA.
that?
Let's do it.
There. Yeah. So yeah, and I was putting this episode together while grieving D'Angelo. So and then I thought about the Black Messiah album and how that when I was looking at the categories that the book was talking about, that album protest. It was right around the time of Mike Brown and different police brutality that was happening. There's reflection and understanding. There's social and political commentary, and then there's storytelling, and all of that is embodied through D'Angelo's artistry and through that specific album, The Black Messiah. So I wanted to show this clip of D'Angelo. I think it's a short of him talking about the Black Messiah.
Song on the album called The Charade, and it specifically speaks to the Oscar Grants and the Trayvon Martins and the Michael Browns. We did that because ain't nobody talking about nothing. The music that's coming out now, everybody's talking about, how many drugs he sold, or how many bottles of champagne they popping at the club. And ain't nobody talking about no real shit. So I know for a fact that the music back then in that day, it fed the movement. We as artists, I really feel like we got a responsibility. These kids, they paying attention to us. They looking at us.
True that, true that. Absolutely. And then we got the Black Messiah. So check out that album or recheck it out and look at the footage, the Saturday Night Live performance, the all the great performances associated with the Black Messiah, because that's a great example of using craftsmanship at a time when we need change. And I felt like we needed more of that in 2020. I found myself listening to a lot of reggae more than other forms because I just needed that. If that was a music that was more in line with what was going on, some of this stuff is just totally not on brand or on time. Yeah, so artists give people something they didn't know they were missing. Isn't that true? It is so true. Um, so, anyone out there have a craft that they feel can be used for positive change? I know you do. Are you ready to be more systematic about how you use that craft for positive change? And if you are, I would say check this book out, Move the Needle, because it does give you some good stuff. The the very last kind of part of it gets into I like this. It walks you through like here, this piece, I'm an activist. So the world I want to live in, describe the kind of world you want to live in. What does it look, feel like? Articulate your vision. And then it gives you like step by steps things that you can do, a vision statement, a mission statement, an issue that you're going to tackle. It like walks you through it. So you are a drummer, a pianist, you bake, you woodwork, whatever it is you do. You make tinctures, you grow cannabis, whatever it is that you do, that's your craft. But you want to combine that craft with social change. This gives you some guidance on how to do it, because we don't know if we weren't reared in in an activist family. We might just not know. And then it also helps you connect to people that are also doing it so that you can learn from each other and we can create these communities. So, yeah, this was a really, really good one as well. I can't underscore it. Like I said, I like the fact that it's very personal. It allows you to reflect on your own self. Like there's this exercise where it has you imagine life 5 years from now, and not so much what you have, but what it feels like. And then it walks you through step by step examples, and then it gives examples of case studies. There's two more things I want to say, points that she makes that I think are worth saying. One is be mindful of performative activism. So, one example she gives is that, like, awareness building. So, let's say, awareness building has its place. But if everybody already knows about it, it starts to become ineffective and performative like. So I'll give an example of breast cancer. We're at a point now, this does not denote the fact that breast cancer is still a problem. But people know generally about breast cancer. About 15, 20 years ago, they started the pink movement. There were walks, there were ribbons. The NFL were participating in it. We know about breast cancer right now. So I don't think you really need to take time to educate people about that. Now, do we know as much about pancreatic cancer? Are there other issues in the world that are not we're not as knowledgeable about? Because it just becomes like, okay, we know about, most of the public knows about that. And what is the call to action? Getting early detection, getting mammograms. There's now legislation for getting mammograms and getting it paid for. It wasn't always like that. But back in 2008, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, now you can get your mammogram for free. You can get your colonoscopy for free. So let's move on to some other causes and issues. And it, like I said, people who are impacted by those are always going to feel that. And I feel that for them. But I think that we need to keep moving for things that people don't know about. And if there's an issue like gun violence we know about, but what's the layer down about gun violence? So if you want to tackle gun violence and you want to make it an awareness issue, what is a narrative to counter? Don't just say gun violence kills 10 million people. We know that. What about it? So that's kind of what I think was good about the book too, is she's saying we're not out here to fake and be performing activism. We want some real down and dirty activism that's going to be impactful. If people can't pay their rents and housing is an issue, let's not just put a awareness statistic out there. Let's go down a layer. So that's was something that I think I'm thinking about too, is how not to be performative out here. It's very tempting to want to just do something quickly. Um, but we want to be effective. So any last comments before we wrap?
Yeah, there's one coming in.
Okay. While that's coming in, as I said, this is a series that's going to continue. So the next book that I'm covering is going to be Pleasure Activism. It's by Adrienne Marie Brown. So tune in next week where I talk more about activism from there. But we do have a comment. Janelle from IG says, Court end of the show, growing and moving cannabis culture into the mainstream was a way for some to take an unpopular natural plant and over time showing its benefits. Yes, that's true. Thank you for that comment, because that is true. Because boy, was that a counter narrative. You know, when I think about all the stuff that the Rastafarian community endured in the 70s around cannabis, and they were really heavily persecuted, murdered. They had their crops destroyed, and now it's become commercialized, and so that's true. That is a really really good point. And I wonder what kind of art is out there that's like doing the counter narrative, because it is still stigmatized. We've got a ways to go with it. So thank you, Janelle. That was a great point. And thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off what my homie talked about. The Cannabis Cup in California. Every
Mhm.
year they get together and they show these really intricate ways that you can use cannabis and hemp that comes from cannabis to in creative ways, crafted ways that
Mhm.
can change the world. Like they even use hemp as a building material, like mortar,
Mhm.
and they show these all these crafty, creative ways of using cannabis and hemp from cannabis to do all sorts of, creative engineering things. So it's really cool. Anybody get a chance to check out the Cannabis Cup, go check that out online, and you'll be shocked what you could do with it.
Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for that tip. So that wraps today's episode. The two books, Protest Kitchen and Move the Needle, two great books to help you get your activism juices flowing, but we are going to continue in the series, and we're going to continue talking about ways that we can elevate our activism. And thank you for rocking out with us, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.